for tuning in. This is another episode of the Reimagine You Lab podcast with me, MG. And you guys know how we do this. I just love having all of the amazing guests that come in, but I love the audience as well. I want to thank you guys for tuning in each week and making the show the success that it has been. I'm telling you, I just want to thank you. So if you have not already, and I know that 15,000 of y'all already have on Instagram, 10,000 on YouTube. Listen, on Spotify, you guys, y'all are making this so good, so good. And if this is your first time listening in, I want to give you an opportunity to invite you to go ahead, click the button so that you get the notifications each week, because every Friday we hit with a new episode and I don't want you to miss it. So tell your neighbors, your friends, your family, your colleagues to join us, because every week there's a change maker in the lab with me, and I'm telling you, it's good. It's good every week. And no doubt today, you done joined on the right day, because guess what? Let me just tell you right now, we about to have a cerebral discussion today, because the only Dr. Candace Holmes is in the lab. Dr. Candace, hello. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you.
I am so glad that you was able to make it today.
Me too.
What a blessing. I'm so glad you're here. But listen, you know, this is the time. The listening audience they already know what this is. This is when we go a little bit beyond the bio, and we are going to give you that opportunity to tell them who you are, where you at, what you do, and how you do it. You ready?
Sure. I'm ready. Let's
All
go.
right. I'm throwing the ball to you, girl. Go ahead.
Catching the ball. You know, I'm a former softball player, so catching the ball is what I do.
Okay.
So I'm Dr. Candace Holmes. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, was born and reared there. What up, though? I now live in Atlanta, and I make sure people know that I'm not from Atlanta. I'm from Detroit. All right. So that's number one. I am a neurofeedback therapy practitioner and a chiropractor. And what that means is that I have a therapy that helps your brain function better than it ever has functioned before. If you're having challenges with mental health issues, or, you know, if you use it like me to decrease your stress levels, or you want to make sure that your brain stays sharp as you age in season, or I say mature into this age, then that's what people come to see me for.
Oh, girl, listen, that brain working better than it ever has before.
Yes.
That part right there. That part right there. That part right there. Yes. So listen, you know what? I love the fact that before we even came on, and I always tell people a lot of times we had good conversation before we even hit the record button.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about this before you came on. How did you get here? You know, how did you even, start having these conversations about brain? Share with us kind of a pivotal moment when you said, you know what, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, because everybody doesn't, thinking Black girls rock, right?
Oh, right.
But you're rocking the brain.
You know, I never would have thought I would have been here either. I have two daughters. My oldest daughter was diagnosed with ADHD when she was 7. I had already been divorced from their dad for about 3 years, and she was struggling. I mean, she was struggling so badly, I didn't think she'd go to college. I mean, I had a come to Jesus moment, like, okay, I understand college isn't for everybody, maybe she'll go to a trade school. I was just thinking, not my daughter. Both my parents are college educated. And so that was the standard. That's the way that we were going. It wasn't ever if you're going, it's where you're going. And so,
right.
7, she lacked focus and attention. She struggled with making friends. She was socially awkward. It was taking her 5.5 hours to do homework every night. It was a struggle. And so time went on, and as a chiropractor, we try to stay away from medications as often as possible, because we know there are other ways. When your body is in the right place, then it can learn how to function differently, and just like the body can heal itself. So I took her to one of my sorors, shout out to AKAs, of course, and she's the one who diagnosed her. And even after she had about 12 therapy sessions, she said, "Are you sure you want to put her on medication?" I'm quite sure. That's why I chose a psychologist over a psychiatrist. My daughter, especially my oldest, has this bright light. People walk into the room, the whole energy changes. That's
Yeah.
who she is. And putting her on medication wasn't something that I wanted to do because I didn't want to dim her light. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't until she was about 13 years old when I came across neurofeedback therapy. It was in one of my chiropractic magazines. An
Okay.
article said drug-free therapy, non-invasive, results can last up to 30 years. It said
Yeah.
ADHD, anxiety, depression. I just like, what was that? Like my eyes just lit up.
Right.
Like, what
Yeah.
is that? And so called and found out that a brain core is founded by one of my former chiropractic professors. He was trying to
Oh,
find a
really?
solution for his nephew who has Asperger's, which is a form of autism. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, if he founded this, and that means there's something to it because right, you're in school and you have people who are just so brilliant and they can teach you the lesson better than the professor or the teacher can. That,
Absolutely.
that's who he was.
That's
And I'm
who it
like,
was.
okay, that's
Okay.
who he was and is. And so I ended up learning more about it, got trained and certified on it, and started working with my daughter, brought the system back to Georgia. And honestly, she was my only focus. I really didn't care about anybody else. Also thankful that her younger sister is gifted and accelerated, because if I had two who were struggling as much as my oldest,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot. So that's how
Yeah.
I got started in it. I started her on one of my programs and she just started transforming. I mean, my mother-in-law called me up. I still call my in-laws, thank you, Lord, because I've heard of stories of, once you get a divorce, whole thing. My in-laws are lovely, so thankful. And my mother-in-law called me one day and she said, talking about my oldest, well, she's just blossomed into herself, hasn't she? I said, yes, she has. Thank you, God, and thank you,
Yes,
neurofeedback.
she
That's
has.
the only thing that changed. I mean, she went from struggling in school to earning A's in honors physics and chemistry in high school, from being socially awkward to having tons of friends, so much I can't even keep up with them, from taking 5 hours a night to taking 2.5 to 3. I mean, she's in college now. She's great. I mean, she's in her 3rd year at Savannah State, the
Yeah.
Savannah State, that she would like me to say,
Okay.
studying to be an environmental chemist. And she's always on the dean's list or the president's list. And I don't have to help her. It's like, glory be, just thank you, because woo, I was not trying to go back to college again. Like I've been to school for 20 years. I'm good. Good.
No, you know what? I think that's so pivotal. I mean, like when you talk about one, what was something that was pivotal that made a change? Like, hey, what made you recognize that something needed to be done here? And finding something alternative to medications, is huge. And that makes such a difference.
Yes, right up my alley. As soon as you said
Yeah.
drug free, and the results
Yeah.
can last up to 30 years, I'm in. Like
Yeah.
what can we do? Let's go. Let's get started.
Yeah, we leaning in for real, for real.
Yes.
So you know what, when you talk about that, so let's kind of get into that, because this is what you practice and what you do. And I'm one of those people. I was one of those GT students, coming up as a kid,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you love all of the brain games and all of
Mhm.
those things,
Yes.
and then you get older, right?
Yes.
And you start thinking about, I'm thinking about, okay, I want to keep my brain health, because you
Yes.
start seeing ads and commercials, your friends,
Yes.
parents, other friends, parents going through Alzheimer's,
Yes.
dementia.
Yes.
You see them struggling. You
Mhm.
look at, just like you said, having, people that you know and love
Yes.
that need support. There's things that are happening in the brain area. And so you're like, okay, how do I keep my mind?
Exactly.
Remember the old, oh my
Yes.
goodness, the United Negro College Fund. The
Yes,
mind
a
is a
mind is a
terrible
terrible
thing
thing
to
to waste.
waste,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Listen, I don't want to waste it, and I
Mm.
don't want it to go to pot either.
Exactly. Exactly.
You
That's
know,
yes.
so talk to me a little bit about, kind of explain like what this neuro
Well,
feedback therapy is, and kind of how it works in layman's terms.
oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
we, just in case I ain't got a big brain to be
Hey,
able
listen,
to
I
understand it.
wrote a book about neurofeedback therapy in layman's terms just for that reason. I don't want to start
Okay.
talking to everybody's eyes, start rolling over like, oh, there she goes. No. So neurofeedback therapy is a sophisticated form of biofeedback. So bio,
Okay.
as you remember back in high school, means life. So biofeedback is the way that the body tells us what's going on. So
Yeah.
what happens with neurofeedback is it's essentially exercise for the brain. So you are connected to a computer after I do a brain mapping just to see where everything is. It's a functional assessment. It shows where the brain is functioning well and where it's having some challenges. Where it's having some challenges, that's what we work to train. So I'm a former athlete, like I mentioned before. I played softball and basketball. I was a pitcher, so I had a pitching coach. The more often I pitched, the better I did, and I didn't even have to think about, you know, which pitch I was going to throw. They told me, I took the position, I threw the ball. Why? Because I have muscle memory. Your body remembers what to do every time. Same thing with the brain. It's just called neuroplasticity. And so that's the body's ability to learn how to remember, to learn how to do things again, and also to make more neural pathways. So I equate it to riding a bike. You learned how to ride a bike, or most of us did. Some kids don't now, but I'm not going, I regress. Digress. At what, maybe 5 to 8 years old or so. So I'm 51. So bet you I can still ride a bike. I would just have to, my brain would have to learn now how to ride a bike as a 51-year-old as opposed to as an 8-year-old. So, you know, I may have a little more weight to me. I may have a little more, you know, my center of gravity may not be so where it was when I was 8 years old. But your body, you know, as you're riding a bike, it learns how to adjust. And so now your brain's like, oh, okay, wait, okay, we got to do this differently now. But you still know how to ride the bike. That's what neurofeedback.
Okay. No, that's good. So thinking about that, you know, I think about, okay, so getting back on a bike and remembering how to ride and things like that. So thinking now and neurofeedback, you know, that biofeedback, what are some of the conditions and things now, you know, that what would be some things that, you know what, maybe I should consider neurofeedback right now? You know, are there some things that, hey, if I'm struggling with,
absolutely. So
you know what, I keep losing my keys, or I keep
can't remember where my parking spot is. Did I drink water this morning? You know, did I? Yes.
Or I came in this room for something, but I got here and what was it?
Let me go back out and come back in, and maybe it'll jog my memory. Yeah, and actually that is a thing. Yes, so little things like that. So I have people who call me who have, like we were talking earlier, who have a history of Alzheimer's or dementia in their family, and they want to use it as a preventative measure. I have patients who were diagnosed with conditions like ADHD, anxiety, depression, traumatic brain injuries, concussions, post-traumatic stress disorder. They've had strokes, or they have memory loss. And they just want to make sure that, you know, those things are corrected to the best of, you know, their ability, or the ability, you know, neurofeedback in the brain to learn new ways of being and beyond. My dad played football in college, and back then, goodness, they didn't have an offense or a defense. It was just play. And he said, I can't tell you how many times my bell was rung, you know, because there was no baseline for concussions. And he started complaining about that he had CRS. And I'm like, CRS, central respiratory. I'm trying to figure out, because I don't remember what CRS is, you know? And so he said, I can't remember. I said, okay. He couldn't remember anything. And so that's where the CRS came from. And so I started him on the neurofeedback therapy program. And he no longer says that. He's 86. My dad is active. He drives everywhere. He's independent, self-sufficient, which is wonderful. And now he doesn't have to, you know, go, oh, where did I put my keys? Oh my gosh, growing up. Has anybody seen my keys? Has anybody seen the keys? Oh my gosh, my mom was, if you would just put the keys in the same place every time, you wouldn't have to look for them. So now the whole house is stressed out trying to find the keys. And now, you know, keys are in the same place every time. Every time, nothing. It's just all encompassing. So essentially, when your brain learns how to function differently and better, then guess what? That's a long lasting change.
Yeah, no, that is, you know, and you don't really even think about it, you know, but it's kind of like, you know what, I learned about neuroplasticity and rewiring the brain, you know, listening to like people like Dr. Caroline Leaf, and I thought I could do that. And I thought, you know, like after your brain cell, if your brain cells drive, you're in trouble. Or, you know, you don't think about having to fix something until something is broken, or until something really gets in trouble.
Exactly.
But you know, I still think that an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure.
Always better to be proactive than reactive. One of my bridesmaids was telling me that she and her sister are noticing that her mom is repeating herself a lot. And her mom is forgetting things. I said, now is the time to do something about that. Because I've had children bring their parents in, you know, adult children bring their parents in. And I said, well, when did you start noticing this happen? Oh, about 2 years ago.
Don't wait that long.
Because guess what? 2 years ago is when their brain started, you know, declining. And so now, you know, it's 2 years gone. And so it's like, oh my gosh, you know, if you, you know, just, it's not, losing memory and losing function is not a normal way of life. That isn't how it's supposed to go. You know, you
Right.
are to thrive and you are to have cognitive abilities and functions well
Yeah.
throughout, your senior
Your
years as
whole
well.
life.
You
Yeah,
know,
you know what? And you don't want to, like I don't, at 52 years old, I don't want to wait until, I am completely impaired or anything, before I start getting any help.
exactly.
That's
And will
me.
you even remember?
Yeah, yeah. Like I don't want to do that. So,
No.
but you know what? I think a lot of times, the Bible says that we perish for lack of knowledge, right? So one of the things that I like to do, especially, on the podcast, I like being able to introduce people to those things that, part of the reason I call it the lab is because in a lab, science says that we can test things, we can test
Yes,
hypotheses, we can
yes,
change our minds, we can
absolutely.
do something new. And so
Absolutely.
one of the things that we do in the lab is sometimes we just change our perspective on things. Like just
Yes.
because we get a little bit more knowledge, we can change our perspective. So talk, you know what, if you would share a little bit about, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So
Yes.
what would you say is the difference? Because sometimes fear will keep people from doing things too. What is the difference between, like, when you're talking about neurofeedback and preparing, what might be happening, because some people would just say, well, that's normal that, you walk into the room and you forget what you came in there for. Like, that's just normal. A lot of women say that, like, I'm going through menopause. That's one of the symptoms on the menopause pamphlet that says, hey, this is something that you're going to experience. But, and so what is the difference between, hey, experiencing some things that may be what is a normal condition,
Mm-hmm.
because you are getting a little older,
Mm-hmm.
and or mental health conditions, because there are some neurological conditions that people are experiencing that may look the
They may match
same.
others. Exactly. Exactly. So one of the things to pay attention to is if there's a history in your family. Do you have
Mhm.
people in your family who have had dementia or Alzheimer's, or who had memory loss, and they did not have traumatic brain injuries or concussions or things like that? That's something to pay attention to, because these conditions have a tendency to run through families. Not all the
Okay.
time, but there's a higher probability there.
Mhm.
It isn't normal for you to like, every once again, sure, some things will happen. Just, you said menopause. In that instance, hormones are changing. We get to
Right.
be wonderful women and we experience all these things from 12 years old
I know
to
it's
our
way too many symptoms. It's way too many symptoms.
50s. And so those hormonal changes affect our brain. So yes, the brain fog can happen, and things like that. That's also an indicator to make sure that you stay on top of, what's happening with your body, and you're proactive in that accord too, to make sure you check with your healthcare professional to see, what my levels are. Like, I was having the challenges with the flashes of heat and going. So I went to my, I didn't know who I went to. I went to my herbologist. She has, and she
Yeah.
said, okay, when you're at ashwagandha, I'm going to put you on some fem silver. I'm going to put you on, some,
Yeah.
what was it? Sea moss and some other. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm going to have you so vibrant, your period to come back. And I said, look, I said, I'm
There's
vibrant
some
without
stuff
my
I can
period.
live without.
I said, just take the flashes away. Like, I'm good. I'm good. Just do that. And I'm great. And sure enough, the flashes went away, and I was like, oh, okay. And so yes, it's and natural again. I get so upset. So I have to take a breath. That's why I have to take a breath, because a lot of times we are conditioned to believe that we need to take a pill for everything, and that's
Right.
not always the case. Remembering that those pills, those medicines, those drugs came from, guess what? Nature. That's what they're based off of, nature. So a lot of
Yeah.
times we're trying to recreate what God has already created perfectly, and trying to
Right.
put our own spins on it. So people can become addicted even to something. So
Right.
that's a whole nother conversation. I'm just going to take a breath and let that go. But my whole goal is to make people aware that there are other options out there for brain health that don't involve medications, and these changes that happen in the brain are long lasting. And some of the things you were mentioning that we can do now
Yeah.
is just sleep. Sleeping is so important. Getting the deep levels of sleep. Oh my gosh. I mean,
Yeah.
back in the day, we were encouraged to get at least 8 hours of sleep, and that still holds true. However, we are so busy and on our devices and everything else, 7 hours. We're happy with 7 hours of deep sleep. And that's for adults. Of course, children need, require more sleep than we do. That's when your memories are cemented into your brain. And that's where your brain has a chance to rest. My brother works at, I guess I can't, it's a technology, I don't know if we can say the name of it, but his whole thing is, how you call into a company and, something's wrong with, whatever your system, and then they don't understand. So they escalate it to the next person. My brother's that next person. And he says, what I asked them, when was the last time you shut your computer down? These are companies, and they'll go,
like the reboot.
Yes. And they'll go, and they'll check, and the average amount of time is 385 days.
That's the average?
That's the average time. They have not shut the computer down in 385 days and wondering why it's not working well. Well, what happens with our phones when we don't shut them down? What do you think happens with our bodies when we don't shut them down and get enough rest and relaxation? Because everything happens while you sleep. Your brain is restored. Your systems are refreshed. You recuperate. You don't get that time, then your brain is off or not. I tell people, if you can't at least get 7 hours of sleep, you might as well just stay up. Wow. You might as well stay up. Because you're not doing any good. So, and taking that hour before you go to sleep to prepare your body for rest. When we were growing up, I'm from Detroit, so I stayed outside. And when the street lights came on, that's when I needed to go inside. Okay, like
the street lights.
That's what somebody said. I saw something on a video the other day. Said we told time by the street lights. Like, oh, time to come in. And we are outside. We were outside playing. We were getting that vitamin D. We were getting the wiggles out. We were learning how to play in the street or wherever you play new games, making up a game, playing old games, activity time and all this other stuff, communicating. Goodness, I was at a college fair. I volunteered at a college fair this past weekend. And the amount of young people who have a challenge just saying their names, just what's your name? Candace. I said, excuse me, Candace. I was thinking, oh my gosh, like project. Candace.
Enunciate.
Look me in the face, some of them shook my hand, and I was like, okay, so it was nice, but it's just, and the person who was volunteering with me is another doctor, and she's like, you got to remember, they grew up with devices, and I was like, that's right, they weren't outside playing. They
Very true. It's a distinct difference. That's true.
It is, and just not even learning how to write in cursive. That's another part of the brain that never got developed. Putting the pen to the paper. I mean, the majority of things are online now, and so the brain doesn't get the fine motor skills and learns how to make those changes in the brain to enhance those brain centers, for comprehension and analyzation, and it's
definitely different, and you can tell.
Oh my gosh, you can tell.
You can definitely tell.
And then we're not going to talk about parents who coddle their children. That's a whole nother thing too. So
my goodness,
I'm writing a talk. I'm constructing a talk on that, crafting a talk on that, because children need to be resilient. Because guess what? Resilient children turn into resilient adults. If we don't give them an opportunity to figure things out, because we do everything for them, they're never going to learn.
They've got to figure it out. Yeah, you do. You really do. You really do. No, I think that's huge. Just kind of even thinking through some of the things that we do, just regular basic stuff that you really want to use the brain more.
Yes.
And when you think about, devices and tools, just kind of using your example there of the, of students and stuff, there's so many things that we don't have to. I mean, we used to have to tell time looking at a clock.
Yes.
You used to have to remember telephone numbers.
Absolutely. I still remember my best friend's telephone number from years ago. I can tell you
exactly.
Backwards and forwards. And it's
You know what? It was so funny. I was looking at, I think it was Tim Mowry had done a video and was asking her son to tell things from a long time ago, how do you dial on a rotary phone?
Yes.
Or, how do you address an envelope?
Yeah, how do you sign your name? I mean, basic.
Yes.
You can't even sign a check anymore. I'm like, what? Yeah. And I had to take my children aside. Okay, this is where you put the date. This is where you put who the money goes to. Write out in cursive. The amount of the money, and then sign your. I mean, I was a substitute teacher for 4 years in middle school, and oh my gosh, I was over lab, it was of science, and they had to sign their lab contracts, and everyone was presenting printed names. I said, no, sign like signature. Oh, well, Dr. Holmes, we don't know how to write in cursive.
They don't even teach cursive anymore.
Oh, I was like, You don't know how to write. I said, what? Well, they don't teach you. So
They
now
don't
you
teach
can't read
cursive
historical
anymore.
documents because guess what? If you don't know how to write in cursive, you won't know how to read. And it's don't give me. I call the dumbing. I've heard of it called the dumbing down of America. I just I feel like it's all by design. I feel
Yeah.
like it's
You know what? I was watching a documentary. I was watching a documentary a few weekends ago called Sentenced, and it was talking about reading levels of students now. And it was just talking about the millions of people. I think the statistic was, because they gave a lot of statistics, but they were talking about that there were 43 million, I believe, Americans, 43 million people a year are in America that could not read at the third grade level.
yes.
And so they were featuring, the people that were featured in the documentary were individuals that were grown-ups, adults, that could not read past the third grade level. And, kind of like their families, these are adults that have children.
Yes.
And it was just amazing because you were able to see kind of this perpetual kind of a cycle. There was a young lady that they had featured, North Carolina, and she was, and I want to say this girl was like 27 years old, and she was just sharing, like she liked working and things like that, but she had stopped working at a local grocery store because she just had trouble, like the owner of the store gave her a job and kind of took her under her wing and stuff, but because she couldn't read and being able to make change and being able to just kind of keep up
Basic.
with basic things in the store, she ended up having to quit. And so now her and her husband, now she's married, her and her husband live in a shed, okay, a shed in the backyard of some individual's house, and they've got like a college dorm size type of refrigerator, and like they just made up a little couch and stuff, and they help the people and the friends of theirs that allowed them to stay back there, so they use the restroom and shower and stuff inside of their home.
Oh, I was
And
going to
help
say,
them
did they
take
have an
care of their
outhouse too?
kids.
I mean, my gosh, that's
And I'm thinking to myself,
2024. Like,
this is 2024, and I said, my God, now how I could, really it brought tears to my eyes because I was like, what, when you said the kind of the dumbing down of America, like you would think that people aren't living like this, but there are.
absolutely.
Protect the brain. Take care
Absolutely.
of the brain.
Protect the brain and make sure that is functioning well. And that's
Yeah.
the thing, if your parents only have a third grade education, guess what? They won't be able to help you with fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and on because they have no idea. They have, I don't say through no farther because I'm getting on,
Mhm.
okay. I'm letting my just take a
Get the help.
yes,
Be
yes,
proactive,
yes,
take care of yourself, take care of the things you
absolutely,
need. Candace,
absolutely.
tell me this, when you were thinking about, some different things that, how do you, just as a person, because you work with a lot of different people, I'm sure, that come
Yes.
into your office and,
Mhm.
you're doing your brain scans and assessments and things like that.
Mhm.
How do you, as a doctor kind of stay motivated and
Oh
help
goodness.
people with their transformations and things like that? What kind of things do you do
Um,
just kind of to help people as they are along in this process and journey?
Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned the word transformations. That's what I live for. I love to see my patients come in to me with these challenges going on, go through my program and see those symptoms, decrease and then see them just like I had a young man who was diagnosed with ADHD, and for the brain mapping, you have to sit there for about 45 minutes to an hour. I give you breaks and everything. With someone with ADHD, that's a challenge to sit there as still as you can. And he was just, like we should say, ants in the pants back in the day. So answer the pants, answer the pants, answer the pants. So we got this assessment done, and then he did the training sessions, and he was getting better. Symptoms were decreasing, and the follow up reports are objective reports, so it shows the percentage of improvement on my system, which I love. And he had his follow up brain mapping, and he finished it, and he was like, wow. He said, I was able to sit a lot longer that time. I think he was 7 or 8 at the time. I said, yes, you were. I said before, it's like, oh my God. It's like, just, just all right. Try to stay still. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Try to stay still. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Keep your feet still. Keep your hands still. And I didn't have to say anything. I was just boop, boop, boop. And it was, he was done in like 45 minutes as opposed to the 60 minutes. So that was 15 minutes saved. And he even noticed it. He even noticed the change.
Yeah.
So that's what I look for, those transformations. I wrote a book. It's called Transform Your Brain with Neurofeedback. And
Yeah.
I included like 10 stories just of, the successes that people have had using this, just having them. I had one young lady who attempted suicide. To be quite honest, she's a teenager. And her
Mhm.
mom called me 3 days after she was released from the hospital. She's like, we got to do something. I was like, oh, absolutely. And so she started working with me, and she also she was improving, and soccer season was coming up, and her mom was stressing out because she wouldn't be able to complete the 2 sessions a day, which is part of my program. And I was like, no, I said, we want her to go play soccer. We want her to have a social life. We want her to engage with her peers. We want her to get some sunshine. We want her to be active. I said, so we're not going to stress out about this. And one day her mom called me up. She's rolling her eyes and sucking her teeth at me now. And I said, oh, like a typical teenage girl? I said, isn't that better than the alternative? And she's like, oh, yeah, yes, it is. It's a different perspective,
Yeah.
so
Perspectives. Yes.
absolutely. So that's what I live for. Just those changes that I know are enduring, and just to see them go from one state to another in a positive direction it always brings me delight.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think that's real good. You know what? I'm glad that you shared those examples, because I was going to ask you about, to share with us some of the success stories, because I think that makes a difference. And I like that you're sharing that, we've talked about, people with dementia and early onset Alzheimer's, and talking about, history, that kind of running in families. But the examples that you've also shared with young people,
Yeah.
so this is one of those things that's kind of, hey, there's no age, don't sound like no age
I
requirement.
start as young as 5. Like earlier than that, it's a little difficult to find a mature 4-year-old who's going to be able to sit for an hour, for the first time to get the baseline done. But otherwise, it's 5 years and up. I mean, and again, I use it for stress relief. So there are different protocols and different settings that I put people on, depending upon, what their goals are. I had a
Yeah.
tennis player who was diagnosed with ADHD, and his dad was saying, he is a phenomenal tennis player. Like, he'll go out there. I'm not very well versed in tennis terms, but from what I understand, there
Yeah.
are, I think, 3 matches. I think you have to win the 2 out of the 3 matches, in sets.
Yeah, sets.
Sets. I think 3 sets in a match. I think that's how you say it. And he would blow the opponent out the first set, and then lose the next 2. And his dad is like, what is going on? And so I asked the patient, I said, so what happens? He said, well, Dr. Holmes said, my brain tells me, well, I know I can beat them. So I've already moved on to the next opponent without closing that loop and finishing those next 2 sets to complete that match.
Yeah.
And so there are protocols that we work with him. And his dad was like, I don't, okay. So we have a tournament coming up this week. And I said, he's going to win that tournament. He was like, yeah, okay. He's in my program. I said, watch, he is. I said, when you come back on Monday, and this is when I just had it in the office, because right now I have a national practice. So my patients can do their work outside of the state of Georgia. And in their homes. And he came back on Monday. He's like, the father said, I don't know what you did. He said, but he won the tournament. I said, I know he did. I know he did. And
Yeah.
so I said, he said, well, I don't think that's what it was. I said, well, what else has changed? I asked his dad, what else changed? And he was like, I said, so that's what it was, and he was like, okay. So then I asked the patient, I said, well, what was different this time, from this tournament to the last tournament? And he said, doc, he said, I got in, he said, okay, I got this person. And it's like, okay, keep at it, 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 next. Keep at it, 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 next. And so he went through every single opponent and blew them out. I mean, he ended up getting a scholarship to play tennis in college, and he recently graduated this year, this May. He graduated, and so hey, why not? So that optimal brain performance, let's go. It helps with athletics as well.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind, because I think sometimes people, how do I know that neurofeedback might be for me? Who is it for?
Honestly, neurofeedback is for almost everyone. There are certain conditions where it will take the brain a little while longer to respond and adapt to the changes. Like if you have the person that has autism or say Parkinson's or is over 65, those are some conditions where the brain can take 2 to 3 to 4 times as long to react because the brain has.
Who's it optimal for though? Like who the people
Oh,
that you see that come in and they have the best experiences with it, make the best progress and things like that. Where have you seen the best
sure.
change?
Autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, traumatic brain injuries and concussions, the memory loss, the migraines, the cognitive decline, post-stroke. Let's see, did I miss any? Those are the main ones. I've had some with dyslexia have better results just because that's a learning disorder. Some people have chronic pain that, again, high stress levels, athletes who are trying to get to the next level, executives who want to make sure they can continue working, beyond the age of 55 or 60, because, who wants to retire nowadays, right? You want to keep that brain going. It's like I tell
Yeah,
people, even if
they
I
sharp.
absolutely. Even if I stopped seeing as many patients as I do, I would still do something. I
Yeah.
just, yes, yes.
Yeah, no, I think no, that's good. I think that that's important. I wanted to make sure that that anybody who may be listening in, that they can identify, hey, this is something that
Oh
I
my
need,
gosh, it is
something
it
that
is
would
so
help.
phenomenal. I understand that everything comes to you when it's supposed to come to you, God's timing. I
Yeah.
always say I wish I would have known about this when my daughter was diagnosed at 7. And the truth is, I was in denial when she was diagnosed at 7 because I'm thinking that's a catch-all. There's nobody in my family has ADHD. But when I was growing up, that wasn't even a thing. So whatever.
You know what? One thing I was going to ask you too was I have heard the numbers, and I don't know what they are. You may know of adults who have ADHD never been
Undiagnosed.
diagnosed,
Absolutely.
undiagnosed
Absolutely.
ADHD in adults.
Yes.
Where you might be like that patient that you were talking about that couldn't sit still for 6 minutes. We were in a women's lock-in last week,
Oh,
and the young lady we were just kind of in a group, and we were talking about being able to just kind of sit with the Lord, sit and listen.
yes.
And she was saying that she had a friend of hers had told her, just sit still for 10 minutes, just practice sitting still for 10 minutes. And she said she had the hardest time just sitting still for 10 minutes. Like she had never done that, like just been able to sit. And most people can't.
Yep. Yep.
Most people
All
can't.
the stimulation, just from the devices and the dopamine hits,
Yeah.
everything, and
Constantly scrolling, watching,
always.
doing something. Like you
Yes.
can't just sit still, and I'll take it back to that Martha Mary syndrome, out of
Yes.
the Bible, right? Like people can't. And I'm like, but when I think about, again, like there is a growing number of people adults who were undiagnosed with ADHD, you know, hey, maybe something to look into.
Oh,
Look
absolutely.
into.
And then, the events that happened, from 2020, beyond even like to use the word, um, brought a lot of things to light as well. So one of the things I said I was thankful that happened is people recognize that their children aren't angels 24 hours a day. So when
Yes,
your
that's
children's with
true.
a teacher and the teacher telling you, hey, something's going on, you're like, oh, what you talking about?
Yeah, it ain't the teacher's fault.
Absolutely. No, no,
It's
not at
not
all.
all on the teacher.
Oh, no. I mean, no. And then I've had patients who are concerned about losing their jobs because they're not able to focus at work, or they're not able to meet that deadline, or they're not able to stay organized. And guess what? That spills back into the home. So marriages are, on the brink of a divorce because, this is not happening at work. And so the support, it's a whole cycle. I did a video a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about going over the reports with parents, who have brought their children in, with ADHD and these conditions, and they'll say, "Oh, wait a minute, I do that. Oh, wait a minute, I do that too." I'm like, yeah, yeah. Where do you think it
I
came
didn't
from?
realize that ADHD is hereditary. That
Yes.
the chances are, if a child has it, that somewhere in the
Where?
family.
And that's why I was in denial, because nobody on my side of the family had it. I checked. I asked every aunt, cousin, uncle, everybody. Nope, 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 nope. And I'm like, wait a minute. My children have a dad. Let me. So I called his cousin, and she said, "Well, oh, there it is." there it is.
It
So I'm
came from
disciplining.
somewhere.
I'm disciplining my child, and she got it honestly, like my mom would say, so there's nothing that, she could do to try,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's part of the mommy guilt that I try to work with, and parent guilt. You do the best you can with what you know and what you have
You
at that time. And I
do.
didn't know, so now that I
Yeah.
know better, I'm doing better, and encouraging other parents to, give themselves grace, and know, we do the best we can with what we know at that time. And now that we have different knowledge, like you talked about, we can make different decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. We want to make sure that we know, when you know
You know
better,
something, you can do something.
you can do
If you
something.
don't know, I mean, that whole ignorance is bliss thing can only take you so far, because now that like just, with neurofeedback, now that I know it exists, why
Yeah.
wouldn't I want to see if I'm a candidate for it? Why wouldn't I want to see if this can help me? Because
Yeah.
my youngest daughter told me one day, Mommy, you don't yell at her like you used to. And I became a yeller, because I'm frustrated. It's 7 o'clock at night. I'm getting home, cooking breakfast, cooking dinner. And, now I'm up with her till midnight every night trying to help her with homework. And she didn't want to go to bed until her homework was completed because she had such a strong work ethic. And I'm like, no, sweetie, you have school tomorrow. Like, you got to go to bed. Like, you need to go to sleep because,
Right.
it's a
Yes.
cycle. And
Yeah. To
so,
be
yes,
ready. Yeah.
yes, yes. So
No.
breaking the cycle and changing the future is just, I mean, she's self-sufficient and independent now. So that's my whole goal. That's any parent's goal, right? And then as an
Absolutely.
adult, you want to be able to, again, to take care of yourself, and be as independent as you can for as long as you can. Goodness.
Yeah. No, that's what it's all about.
Mhm.
No.
Absolutely.
Oh, Dr. Candace, this has been so good.
Oh,
So
thank
good. Learning so much. So, Dr. Candace, how do people get in contact with you?
Sure. So if you want to book a complimentary discovery call with me to see if you're a candidate, you can go to bookwithdrh.com. And it doesn't matter how you spell it. You can spell out drh.com or drh.com, and it'll take you right to me. And again, you don't have to be in the state of Georgia in order to benefit from my programs. I have a national practice, so I can coordinate and monitor you remotely.
Awesome. And we make sure that we'll have all of those details inside of the link so that you guys can make sure that you get in contact. Now, Dr. H, before we let you get out of here, you have got to tell us what would, because it's all about change. It's being able to make change, neuroplasticity,
Yes,
rewiring the brain. There's
yes,
new things
yes.
that you can do. Once you learn and you hear about it, you discover something new. What would you tell change makers when we talk about change is a choice? That's what I always tell
Absolutely a
people.
choice.
What would you say are the top 3 pieces of advice that you give to change makers?
Yes. The first piece of advice is to get those 7+ hours of sleep every night. Make that a priority. Make it a priority. Turn the television off. Grab a book an hour before your bedtime to give your brain a chance to calm down and settle. A lot of times people aren't able to sleep because their brains are trying to remember something. Another tip is to write down those things that you're trying to remember so that your brain can let it go and you can actually get into those deep stages of sleep. Secondly, I would encourage people to get outside and walk and get that fresh air and that vitamin D. It is essential for mental health, mental health and wellness. Lastly, water. Drinking alkaline water. You saw me take a couple of swigs from water. I'm a NECAN representative. Alkaline water is the way to neutralize your system. The majority of foods that we eat and drinks that we consume are acidic. And guess what loves acid? Diseases, dis-ease. So neutralize that. Alkaline is the opposite of acid, so it can neutralize your system. So why not start with the water and make sure you flush all those toxins out? So the recommendation is half your body weight in ounces of water per day. So if you weigh 100 pounds, 50 ounces of water a day. Have people say, well, I drink a gallon of water a day. You don't need to drink a gallon of water a day. You don't weigh like that. Your weight it won't support that. And there's such a thing as waterlogging your system. And so that can happen too. You can have too much water. So you want to make sure you're drinking the right amount of water. A lot of people aren't sick. They're just dehydrated because the waste products are still in their systems. And that's not great for your body and definitely not great for your brain. You want to flush everything out and keep everything moving and circulating.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So 7 hours of sleep. Make
Plus,
sure 7 hours plus.
yes, plus
per night.
yes.
Walk and get you some sunshine and vitamin D. Walk, sunshine is the vitamin D. So make sure you walk and get you some vitamin D while you're outside. And
Yes.
drink you some water. Alkaline water is the water you need to be.
Absolutely. Become a water snob. You know, if you go to my website, Brain Corp Duluth, there are links to that. I mean, just even the water that you put on your body, you know, typically it has, you know, some components that you wouldn't even want to have on your system. And our skin is our largest organ as far as surface area is concerned. So, you know, what are you putting on your body daily? You know, I mean, it's a lot. Like, it's a lot, but we can do things to mitigate it to be healthier. So just be proactive with your health from your brain all the way through.
All the way through. Amazing. Dr. Candace, this has been great. I want to thank you so much for coming into the lab today.
Thank you for having me.
It has been my pleasure. And for all of you who have tuned in, I want to thank you for listening in. It is always my pleasure to serve you with amazing individuals, amazing topics today. No doubt I told y'all it was going to be good. I told you it was going to be good. Dr. Candace gave us so much that we needed today. So if you need it, even if you don't, I would tell you to go on and check out that book with Dr. H.com. Make sure that you go out there just so that you can get some information, get a little more information. Check it out. It's a complimentary consultation. It will not hurt you. I'm sure it will only help you. Make sure you check her out. She's amazing. And I want to thank you. Oh, and don't forget, she's got a book too. She's got a book, Transform Your Brain with Neurofeedback. Come on, y'all. Get a copy. I want to make sure that you have everything that you need to live long, keep your brain strong, stay healthy, stay well, keep that brain up. I'm telling you, it's gonna serve you well. Now, people are living longer, and you want to stay in your right mind as long as you possibly can. I'm telling you, you do. You do. You don't want to be one of the people sitting in a rocking chair and you don't know where you at or who you sitting in front of or who's talking to you and all that kind of stuff. You want to know. Don't you want to know?
Oh, absolutely.
I want to know.
I want to know through and through.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for being here. It has been a pleasure. I will see you back next week on the Reimagine You Lab podcast with MG. Thank you, Dr. H, for coming in this week. And we will see you guys next week. Mwah.